Hi everyone, it's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alanna and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 6 years. And a lot of people who watch my channel are actually interested in moving to Canada, which is awesome, very cool, big decision. I know there's a lot of things to consider, but it's a great country. However, today I'm going to share 6 things that all British people will miss if you choose to move to Canada. If you like this video and you want to see more videos, which would be wonderful, please consider subscribing. But without further ado, let's go. Number 1, walkable towns. Now, unfortunately, North America as a whole suffers from this issue. We have very few walkable towns. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, for most Canadians, most Americans, they have to rely on driving. You can't just walk around town. Typically, you're going to live in the suburbs, and walking through town, walking around town, living in a walkable town is pretty much a foreign concept. Whereas here in the UK, of course, it's just been my experience, but towns are much more walkable. They are easy to get around, and you can actually walk places in a realistic amount of time with a realistic amount of distance. If you move to Canada, unfortunately, this is something that you will probably have to sacrifice. Of course, if you live in a big city like Toronto, you can get around Toronto, walking, public transport, all that kind of thing. But for most Canadians, we live in towns and you can't just walk around the town. You pretty much have to drive into town. It sucks. There's pros and cons to it. But yeah, the idea of walkable towns is probably not something you're going to see in Canada. Hi, are you still interested in moving to Canada? Perhaps you'd like to brush up on your language skills with Lingopie. Now, before you click off this video, can I just say what the discount is? If you use my link in the description, you're going to get 65% off an annual plan with Lingopie, okay? My link in the description, 65% off. Is that interesting at all to you? If so, let me tell you all the cool stuff that this platform does. Now, Lingopie. What is it? Let me tell you. Lingopie is the first language learning platform that actually uses foreign TV and movies to help teach you a language. And with that, it comes with a ton of really cool features for you to get the most out of learning that new language. We're talking interactive subtitles where you can actually click on words to get a definition, mashups where there are dual subtitles in both the new language you're trying to learn and English. You can also change the playback speed of the language. So if you need them to slow down, you can actually slow it down so you can follow along easier. There's also a sidebar that has the transcript of everything that's been said as it's going through, so you can refer back to things that have already been said. Lingopie also has built-in flashcards, built-in quizzes, and a say it function where you can actually speak the pronunciation into Lingopie and you'll get a feedback score. How cool! And I'm not done, but I'm almost done. Lingopie adds new movies and TV shows every week, so the catalog is always growing, and they also offer a 7-day free trial. So if you are interested at all, make sure to check out my link in the description. I think it's a really interesting way to learn a language. Like when I was in school, you were learning things like the horse is brown. But with Lingopie, you can learn a language the way that it's actually spoken in real situations by watching movies and TV, which I just think is really cool. So if you want to check them out, link in the description. But let's get back to my video. Number 2 on things British people will miss in Canada is the community pub culture. So in Canada, we have bars, got a fair amount of bars, but the vibe in a bar is very different to a pub, and it's very different to a local community pub. I've said it before and I will say it for the rest of my life. There's something so special about a local pub. It's very homey and cozy and comfortable, and it's very much like a community vibe, typically, okay? You may not get that at your local Wetherspoons, but typically there's a community vibe at a pub. In Canada, we do have British pubs, but they're kind of a novelty and they tend to be more like a restaurant than like a hangout sort of space. We do have bars, but that is a different vibe. That is like you're going out like to drink, to party a bit more, like a bit more of a loud kind of vibe, if that makes sense. But the local that I've come to know and love here in the UK is missing in Canada, and it is something that you have to accept. You'll likely not experience if you move to Canada. Of course, there are always exceptions. There always are. But typically, Canada lacks that real like community pub feeling. Number 3, we have football, which thankfully for me, I don't care. So yes, Canada does have football, although we will call it soccer. I'm so sorry. There's literally nothing you can do about it. Canada does have soccer and it is like somewhat popular, but it is nowhere near as popular here in the UK. I always know when there's like a big match on or a big game has just finished because you will likely hear people like screaming in the streets, or God forbid you were on the train when a game lets out and everybody's like piling on the train and singing and everybody's pretty much drunk, and lots of football songs and all that kind of stuff. It is fun and it is, again, it's like this community vibe that comes along with it. I personally don't like football. I'm so sorry, that shouldn't surprise you. So this one's not so much a big deal for me because I don't care either way. But if you are someone that's like really passionate about football and you go to the your local pub and you watch the game and it's like a real community vibe, you get far less of that in Canada. Of course, they do exist, but certainly not to the level that you're probably used to. And I would say in terms of popularity, soccer is not too high up. I'd say like basketball, baseball, hockey, those are probably more popular. Soccer is on the list. It is popular. We do have some teams, but it's nowhere near the most popular, nor is it anything like what the UK experiences. Number 4 on our list, we have public transport. Yay! So like I mentioned with walkable towns, the other struggle that Canadians often have, same with Americans because our countries are laid out very similar, is that public transport kind of sucks. And I know here in the UK, especially with the trains, there's lots of issues with the trains, and Brits, I know you guys love to complain about the trains, okay? I get it. All right, I'm down here in the Southeast. I ride Southeastern, okay? I've dealt with the same issues. However, I don't think maybe perhaps you guys appreciate what you have, even though it's flawed in certain ways, because in Canada and in America, you don't even have access to it. So in Canada, I learned how to drive right at 16 because I have to rely on driving, as a lot of Canadians do. We don't live in walkable towns, and because things are so spread out and so far away from each other, you have to drive. Of course, we do have trains and we do have buses, and big cities, you know, are a bit different. They might have a metro or whatever. You can't rely on it, unfortunately. For me, all of the jobs I had in Canada, I could not get to with public transport, not a single one. So while it does exist, and if you live in a big city, I'm sure you can get by. But again, for many Canadians who do not live in a big city, we live in the suburbs, we live in towns. I am about a 45-minute drive to the local train station, the closest train station. It's just not possible. You pretty much have to have a car. So if you are moving to Canada and you're living in a town, in a suburb, you really need to look at getting a license, getting a car, and driving, because relying on public transport for a lot of Canadians, it just doesn't work, unfortunately. So any Brits watching, next time you're about to slag off the train, all right? And I know you're gonna do it, I'm gonna do it too. Just take a moment and appreciate what you have. Because here in the UK, here in England, where I am in Kent, I could walk to stations. I could take the bus to so many places. I am not reliant on a car. And of course, again, there are parts of the UK where you're too remote, you have to drive. I get it. But again, from my experience, from my personal opinion, my life experience here, I can get by without a car, which is like, as a Canadian, it's mind-blowing. Next on our list of things British people will miss if they move to Canada, guess what? A snowless winter. Here in the UK, I've been here for what, like 6 winters now? Maybe even 7 winters. I think one winter we had the Beast from the East, which was a big event because we had quite a lot of snow. I have not experienced anything like that since. We get the odd dusting of snow, a little bit of ice, but nowhere near the snowy winters I have suffered through in Canada. Now, Canadians will tell you they don't always get snow, especially in places like British Columbia. You're gonna get rain and likely instead of snow. It's different climate, very similar to the UK, to be honest. But for a lot of Canadians, snowy winter. It may not snow all winter. You may get no snow. We've had the odd winter where there's like almost no snow at all. I've also had winters where it snowed on Halloween and then it snowed throughout the winter and again into April. I think May has probably been the latest I've ever seen snow. So keep that in mind. If you love winter, then hey, that's really exciting. Maybe you like winter sports like snowboarding and skiing and cross-country skiing and whatever. I do not. I don't like the snow. I don't like winter sports. I miss snow like at Christmas, but to be honest, I much prefer the English winter where things are still very green and very lush. And you deal with rain and cold and all that business, but typically far less snow. So just something to keep in mind. If you are not a fan of the snow, that might be a problem. Next up is something that I didn't really think about it until you've experienced the British equivalent. And now, as a Canadian living abroad, I would have a very difficult time going back to Canada because vacation time. Typically for Canadians, you get 10 paid vacation days per year. 10. That's it. It's honestly really depressing thinking about it. It's horrible. Now that may vary employer to employer, but typically 10 days, and you can increase that by staying with your employer for X amount of years. So maybe after like 5 years, you move up to 3 weeks or something like that. So you really have to stay with your employer and build up the additional paid vacation time. But typically, and all the jobs that I worked at, it was 10 days for the whole year. Yeah. It's horrible, isn't it? Now, let me read you something real quick. Typically, most workers in the UK are legally entitled to 5.6 weeks paid holiday a year. Now, this includes agency workers, workers with irregular hours, and workers on 0-hour contracts. Now, an employer can choose to include public holidays within that 5.6 week number. So when we have a public holiday or a bank holiday, that may be included in your number. But even still, we're talking about 5.6 weeks to Canada's 10 days. It's heartbreaking. So for me personally, that is something that I really struggle coming to terms with if I were ever to move back to Canada, if I was ever to be employed again, like traditional employment, going back to potentially 10 days of holiday. It's really difficult, especially when you think that if you wanted to travel away from Canada, you have to go quite a ways from Toronto to Gatwick, London. The flight path that I take, it's like 6.5 hours, I think, to 7.5 hours one way. It's quite a journey. If you want to go further afield, of course, even longer. And then once you get over the jet lag, you do your holidaying stuff, your vacation, then you got to come home because you only have 10 days for an entire year. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just, this one, I could rant about this one all day. But I should probably stop there. If you do decide to move to Canada, I hope you have a wonderful time. Canada is a truly awesome country, all right? I'm not biased. I promise. It is a fabulous country, but it isn't without its negatives. If you like this video and you want to see more videos, why not check out this one where I share some reverse culture shock I had when I went back to Canada. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!